Welcome to my show, Money Making Conversation Masterclass. I'm your host, Rashawn McDonald. I recognize that we all have different definitions of success. For you, it may be the size of your paycheck. Mine is inspiring people to develop a plan to reach their dreams. It's time to stop reading other people's success stories and start writing your own. You can only exceed expectations by believing in yourself. People always talk about their purpose or gifts. You read about it all the time in social media. If you have a gift, leave with your gifts and don't let your friends, family, or coworkers stop you from planning or living your dreams. My guest is an old friend in the business, somebody I'm very proud of, Jawn Murray, executive producer of the new hit, nationally syndicated Sherri. That's Daytime Talk, hosted by the one and only Sherri Shepherd. A recognizable face, he has spent a majority of his career as a TV host, contributor, media personality, and as a journalist. Prior to joining Sherri, he was an executive producer of a very popular series on TV One, where he produced and directed episodes of the docuseries called Uncensored. We have a lot to talk about. I'm only going to give a little of his credits in this particular opening, but we're going to talk about a whole lot of credits once we start talking. Please welcome to Money Making Conversation Masterclass, Jawn Murray. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Rashawn. Well, I like your digs that you got set up there too, man.
Well, thank you very much. You know, all these people have been on my show. I have not just snatched their pictures online. You know what I'm saying? and Sherri's up there because I got my little studio I built out. I'm not Sherri. I'm not Sherri. But I'm gonna tell you something, man. Let's take the elephant out of the room, okay? Because this room, the elephant don't need to be in there taking up all this good spirit in here. Brother, I am proud of you. This interview is about you, but you know how I feel about Sherri. I personally went up there, man, to hug both of y'all and shake your hand and say, hey, brother, congratulations, man. Let's talk about your feelings and where you at right now, especially when the ratings came out, announcing the success of the series so far. We're going to continue to climb. When I say series, I'm talking about the Daytime Talk called Sherri, hosted by Sherri Shepherd.
Absolutely. Well, Rashawn, let me first and foremost say we were so excited to have you here hanging out with us. It meant a lot. You've had great success in this very genre with multiple people and multiple platforms. Mm-hmm. And so to have you here really was validating for us, man. And to not only get your feedback and to hear that you were enjoying yourself, watching you, like there were times where I would catch you from stage on the side of the stage and you were laughing at the stories, you were taking in the audience, and just seeing you in real time have a good time, which is our mission for everybody that watches this show, that comes to this show. It meant a lot to us because you're one of those people like me, Rashawn. It takes a lot to make you laugh out loud.
Yes, sir.
So to see you laugh out loud, yes. I knew we were achieving our goal.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. The whole process of being an executive producer is that, you're reaching a lot of people that you don't know and an audience you can't see. So to see a live reaction is always instant validation. Okay, he got it. Okay, this did work. This did make sense. But watching you take on the role of executive producer on a national series that's cleared at over 90% of this country, that means you're talking to people in Utah. You're talking to people in Vermont. You're talking to people in Alaska. You're talking to people in Texas. How's the show prepared? At what point of view are y'all coming? Other than Sherri, we know she's the star of the show, but you got to reach soccer moms, the Latino community, the African-American community, the conservative community. Do y'all take all that into consideration when you're doing the segments?
You know what, Rashawn? One of the things that we just try to be intentional about is giving people unapologetic Sherri. The beauty of Sherri is, and I had to tell this to our team here in a meeting one time, Sherri was what we like to call white famous before she was black famous.
Yes.
Sherri was somebody who carved out a niche in the Hollywood community as the little funny black girl on all the big major white sitcoms.
Yes.
When Sherri first got on The View, they did in the research studies, because people outside of the industry don't know that all these shows do focus groups and research. Mm-hmm. There are these things that people like to talk about called cumulative scores, yes, which quantify your impact to the audience. And when Sherri first got to The View, the black audience was like, who is she? And how did she get this job? And, how does she deserve this opportunity? Right. Mm-hmm. And by year 2 or 3, she had become one of the favorites with the black audience because they felt as though she spoke to their voice. So she was somebody who middle America could relate to and liked. She's somebody who felt safe to them because they had seen her on Friends and Everybody Loves Raymond and all these big major franchise sitcoms. But then she was carving out a space for Black audiences. So by the time she left The View after her 7+ years on the show, Sherri had created this impact that really was kind of universal. She started moving in the spaces in which we talk about how Whoopi moves, or Michael Jordan moves, or maybe Will Smith before the Oscar slap.
Right.
A successful Black talent that all of America just see as a talent. And yes, at some point, yes, people do remind you of the color of your skin. But for the most part, Sherri became one of those people that became relatable to everybody. You know, you found something in her journey to connect to. So when we're preparing the content for the show, we're looking at stories and ideas and guests. We really try to do the things that feel authentic to Sherri, because one of the things that we've learned is that if Sherri is doing something that feels authentic to her, that's fun for her, that's organic for her, then the audience has that same reaction to it, you know? And so if it's not something that's natural for her, if she can't find the humanity in it or the funny in it or the flirty in it, then we'll stay away from it, because if it doesn't connect with her, it's not going to connect with Mildred in Montana.
Absolutely. And I think that's important. The beauty of when you talk about her career, her relatability. I met Sherri when I was co-executive producing the Jamie Foxx show back on the WB. And she was an actress we hired. And that's when she first came into my life. And then so I've been at the, like I said, on the windowsill watching her career. And you're absolutely correct. Being able to transition into white sitcoms, white television projects seamlessly. And that was a testament to her crossover ability. And then, like you said, The View only just solidified it. And then when she came out, she was back to doing those things when she was no longer part of View, doing those white sitcoms or those non-traditional characters that you wouldn't assume to be relatable to a Black actress or a Black actor. Then I see her at Essence, walking the streets of Essence, Black women stopping her, taking photos, taking selfies. So that type of crossover, and I was blessed. When I say blessed, ladies and gentlemen, I arrived in New York when they was letting the audience in. And I'm gonna tell you something. He's right. I've been fortunate to launch a lot of TV shows, whether it's sitcoms, whether it's game shows, or whether it's talk shows. The audience means everything, and how that audience comes in. We have a term we do in talk show world called car wash. In other words, if somebody comes in, they don't look up to snuff. We're telling we might have a coat in the back to put on them, or oh, you look pretty bad. We're gonna put you on the back row. You can't sit on the front row. That's car washing your audience. This audience that showed up that I saw looked like they was going to church, looked like they was ready for a fashion show, and they were the stars. How did she make that switch? We know it was the Wendy Williams show, but to come on the air and an audience already lined up that fits her brand, how did she pull that off, Jawn?
Well, you know, the people are just responding to her. You know, here's the thing, you know, people know that we inherited a production team from the Wendy Williams show and Debmar Mercury. But everything that has been done to prepare for the Sherri show, it has been very different from that. You know, there's some people who worked for this syndication company for 13 years, but we've really been able to condition people to adopt the language of this is day one on a brand new franchise. So this isn't year 14 of a franchise that Debmar's been producing. This is season 1 on a brand new show that's literally all about Sherri. So the audience looks very different from the audience that used to come to the previous show. The makeup of the demographics that we have, and you know, even with our television reach, right. You know, our show is syndicated in something like 98.5% of the country. Which is a far more expansive audience than, you know, there have been lots of stories in the press that we inherited time slots from Wendy Williams. But the truth of the matter is we expanded on many of those time slots. Absolutely. And because the Wendy Williams show was only in about 69% of the country. And so we've added an additional 30+% to our audience. And so the timing and the appetite for Sherri was just right. And we lean into all things Sherri and making sure that this environment is a true reflection of her. You know, the through line is joy. The through line is laughter. The through line is friendship. You know, and the friendship part is so important, which is why on our premiere episode, one of her friends was one of our first guests, Candy Burris. You know, another friend of both of ours, singer Trinice of American Idol fame, recorded our theme song. Talk show legend, you know, and friend to us both, Rolanda Watts is the voiceover announcer for our show every day. And so leaning to these elements that are our real life personas has really helped with an organic connection to the audience. And that's been imperative for our success, for sure.
Well, you know, social media can be a curse and it can be a blessing. And then you can read certain things in social media that just make you smile. Your post that you did on LinkedIn with Rolanda Watts was one of those posts that made me smile. It also let us know that life is about a journey and you never know how you will reconnect with a person. And is that person humble? Is that person ready to accept where you are at, versus where they where y'all met the first time around? Tell everybody about the Rolanda Watts relationship and the post that is one of my favorite posts. I'm gonna just tell you, John, when I saw that, I shared it, I liked it, and because I love Rolanda Watts there, and I totally respect who you are and watch your journey from Tom Journey to now. But that was a post that meant something to me.
Absolutely, Rashawn. You know, when I was a student in college, well, first before that, when I was a student in high school, we took a class trip to New York City and we sat in the audience of the Rolanda Watts show. And I'll never forget, LaToya Jackson was the guest that day. And I, you know, and so then by the time I got to college, I was a latchkey kid, Rashawn. So talk shows were my babysitters. I get home after school, I let myself into the house, and Ricky Lake and Rolanda and Montel Williams, those were my babysitters.
Yes.
So I remember hearing of Ricky Lake's story and how she was discovered fresh out of college, and she was the youngest talk show host in the business. And I thought that was going to be my trajectory. I thought I went down to Norfolk State. Shout out to anybody that went to a HBCU. And I thought I was going to go to this historically Black college. Somebody was going to realize how gifted I was and give me a talk show. Right. And so in an effort to do that, I went on the Rolanda show at the time with the young lady I was dating and professed my love for her because I thought going on Rolanda's show and being on there, she was going to be like, oh, he's the one. We got to give him a talk show next.
All right.
It didn't happen. And so, but once I left school and started working professionally in the business, you know, my first act was that of an entertainment news writer.
Yes.
And one of the first interviews I actually did was with Rolanda Watts. I went to LA to the Soul Train Awards as a guest of Coca-Cola at the time, and went to this restaurant with my mentor, the legendary media personality Tanya Hart, and her husband. And Rolanda came and stopped by the restaurant to say hello to me, to meet me in person. And so she, as someone who I was a fan of, who I aspired to have a morsel of the success that she had in the business, and then someone at one point that I ultimately became friends with. And so when we were mapping out and shaping what we wanted the Sherri show to be, we were talking about voices and voiceover. There were several people we were looking at, and Sherri looked at me one day and said, I've always loved the uniqueness and the richness of Rolanda's voice. And that's what I want to hear right before I walk through the door. Wow. And so to not only have Rolanda be the voice of our show, but to have her come and sit in the audience on our premiere episode, it really was a full circle moment for me, because I went from sitting in the audience of her talk show as a high school kid to her being in a show that I'm executive producing alongside Sherri Shepherd. And it really was a true full circle moment.
Now, we say the word executive producing. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But sometimes I see your face, your little handsome face on TV comments. So when you say, Rashawn, when I graduated from Norfolk, I went up to Rolanda. I was trying to be a talk show host. I'm not saying you're a talk show host, but you making appearances on a successful talk show, John. Talk about how that, from a creative standpoint, how did that come about? Because it's very effective.
Thank you, Rashawn. You listen, I grew up wanting to be like the Black Regis Philbin, Black Tom Bergeron, and I love guys like Arsenio. And this opportunity has almost made me like the Black Gelman. Anybody who watched Regis and Kathy Lee or Ryan and Kelly know that they have an executive producer who sometimes appears on camera. Or if you are of a generation older than me, clearly you remember maybe like Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon, you know? And so Yes, I've been wrangled into the on-camera executive producer role, and it's great. Again, one of the things that really work, particularly in the daytime space, Rashawn, and you know this, is that authentic chemistry works, and the fact that Sherri and I have a real life relationship in addition to our working relationship, it resonates with people on camera. And so she was just telling me in a conversation the other day that one of the things that she loves to hear about is people just love to hear us have our moments on camera, and that we are able to thread our real life experiences into some of these wonky and funny and hilarious stories. Sometimes I'm teasing her as we're talking about something that may have to do with divorce. Because, I didn't want her to marry that second knucklehead. Or sometimes because Sherri's like a real life I Love Lucy, she forgets a factoid or something in a story or something that she's talking about. And because I'm like this pop culture enthusiast, I'm able to fill in the blanks and help her continue the journey. So man, it's really a beautiful thing. It's a magical thing, but more than anything, this is an authentic presentation of how we are in real life.
Well, I was fortunate to be an executive producer of a successful daytime talk, and I'm a Black man. And I'm always happy to hear our Black sisters being executive producers of these shows, these news programs. But rarely do we see Black men being in this capacity because it's daytime talk, and daytime talk is supposed to be focused on women. So we generally not looked upon of having the proper voice, especially because we're African American, that will relate to the white soccer mom who's 51 years old in the Midwest. You being out, Tara Banks was on the show, and I was actually up there when she was taping that particular episode, talking about Black men executive producing, and that really meant something to you.
It did, Rashawn. Let me tell you, that day was really special because I had never met really Tyra Banks before.
Yes.
I think I saw her in passing sometime, but we never had a moment. And so before our show, both Sherri and I individually go up and we greet our guests and we welcome them, to our home. And it really sets the tone for people's experience at the show because, they feel safe. They know that they're coming to a place that there are no gotcha moments and we're not ambushing anybody. Like, come and have a good time with us. And so I went up to greet Tyra Banks. And, one of our producers here at Sherri used to be her personal assistant. And Tyra Banks had shot her talk show in the very same studio that we're in right now. And so this producer who has his own office now used to work inside of the dressing room where Sherri's dressing room is. Right. And so I'm telling Tyra, do you know your former producer, Joe Colasante, is your former assistant, Joe, is a producer here? She had no idea.
Wow.
So she had me go get Joe so she could see him. And so by the time they had their moment and we got down and taped the segments for the show, after Tyra's second segment, she asked me, could she give me a hug? And I said, absolutely. And she says, I just have to tell you, seeing you here inspires me. She says, because when I was doing this, there weren't Black male executive producers. No. And she said, my manager at the time was a Black man, and he got the executive producer credit, but he wasn't actually doing the work. Yes. And they tell me, you're actually doing the work. And I want to say to you, keep doing it because I'm inspired seeing you here. Man, it touched me because the truth of the matter is there have not been a lot of us, Rashawn. You worked in the space. Twitch became an executive producer at Ellen, and that's a good brother there. He reached out to me and was so supportive when I was going through my journey. And there have been one or two others in the space, but they're few and far between. Yes. And, not only did what Tyra said to me meant a lot, but Heather Gray, who was the executive producer of the showrunner at The Talk, who passed this summer, passed 3 days before we were supposed to meet in person. Wow. Because over the last year, she and I had become fast friends. And once this opportunity presented itself, she was one of the people who was there with me at every turn, encouraging me, coaching me, giving me insight on my journey. I also got to acknowledge the great Bill Getty, who helped create The View with Barbara Walters. He was so wonderful to me while I was going through my negotiations and taking this pivot with Sherri to make sure I was empowered with information and tools and knowledge that I needed to be effective in this space. And when we're all stepping into a new area, we all need community, Yes. Sometimes people like to hold stuff close to their vest and we like to move in secrecy. And it's great to be discreet about the things you have going on. But sometimes you have to lean into the excellence that other people have and let them give you a perspective that's going to sharpen your iron. And I was grateful to have a community of people that rose up for me because folks knew it was important for me to be on this journey with Sherri. And it was important for me to make a substantial impact doing this work.
Which is really important for me to hear come out from your voice, because in the sense that, you're doing things. Sherri is your cornerstone, John Murray. I'm talking to John Murray, one of the executive producers of the show, that the hit series, because when you see these ratings, you don't know, John, all you do is just work hard, work hard, work hard. You don't know what America's going to say. You had Jennifer Hudson popping out there. You don't know if people's perceiving you or any animosity, any negative takeover from Wendy. All y'all been doing is good spirited stuff, but you're doing uncensored. You're about to do a you're moderator for the Lewis Cards, the Blueprint Men's Summit in Chicago coming up this month. When you're doing these things outside, how are people reacting to you, Mr. Murray?
Well, Rashawn, one of the blessings that I had before going on this journey with Sherri was that I was like a road MC, man. I was always on the weekend hosting events, holding a microphone on a plane, in a hotel, and I really loved it. It was the thing that was my constant in between the inconsistency of the TV world. What I'm grateful about is a lot of that is being enhanced now that I'm on this journey with Sherri, because I'm one of a few people who are thriving in a space where Black men haven't had great success. We are few and far between. People want to hear about that. They want to learn about that. And, and I'm open to sharing and encouraging and inspiring. So it's great to be able to move back in some of the same spaces I've already had success in with this new victory under my belt. I'm excited to go to Chicago and do this, the summit with Lewis Carr, because the truth of the matter is there are now a lot of spaces where safe places where Black men can find refuge in community with each other. Like if you didn't pledge one of the HBCU Greek letter fraternities, you don't necessarily, or unless you grew up in a house full of brothers, there are always places that once you reach a certain level of success or you're thriving in a particular area professionally, that you can find safety and refuge with each other, And so I'm grateful to be going to a place it was a summit built just around this, men finding Black men finding success in their respective genres, coming together for an informative, empowering, and informational 2-day summit. I'm grateful that both Lewis and Nicole Pittman, who works with him on it, thought enough of me to invite me long before the show premiered to come in and play a part in this. And so I'm in a place, Rashawn, and you know this journey because you've done it yourself, that not only am I helping to shape great content for the masses to have, but one of the things that most excites me is that there are some other people who have been working in this business, great talent who've been on the sidelines, experts in various fields, underdog, unsung talent that we've been able to put in the game, that we've been able to give opportunity to, that we've been able to give a platform to shine. And that's one of the things that means more to me than anything. Taking a chance on people who can maximize this opportunity and use it to do some other great things. Sherri always talks about Chef Melba Wilson, who, if you've ever come to New York City, everybody goes up to Melba's in Harlem.
Yes.
But Melba has become a dynamic TV chef. She's had such great success, her philanthropic work. But we had her join us a few times when Sherri was guest hosting for Wendy Williams. And not that opportunity contributed to her next blessing, but shortly thereafter, she got called in to guest host with Ryan Seacrest on Live with Kelly and Ryan, which is the #1 show in all of daytime. Nobody else does. Outside of The View, but they are the #1 show in syndication, which The View is a network TV show. But for Melba as a Black woman to be able to go and have that opportunity after coming in and helping cooking up a little bit of magic with us, that's what we want to do, man. We want to help shine a light on people who need brighter lights shine on them for sure.
Well, I've always enjoyed your personality. I've always enjoyed your mind. You're smart, very, very smart, very informed, and and your personality is always engaging. I never felt like, a lot of people they come around men who are successful and feel challenged or feel insecure. You never shine that light of in other words, you got your place in the room. you cool with it. Just let me do my thing. If it expands a little bit, don't get nervous. I'm just doing my thing. It's called competition. It's called competition. But as you come through this whole world, and I've seen your journey for a long time, if you could point out one person that may have been instrumental in your entertainment arc, who would that be?
Oh, there are actually some really good people that have helped me a lot. I talked about meeting my mentor, the living legend, media personality, Tanya Hart. But I often celebrate how when I was a college kid so Rashawn, I still look like a young man, but I'm in my 40s.
Right.
So like I'm kind of in that in-between phase. So like, yes, I'm in the streets and social media, and I'm popping. I'm learning the lingo. All the 20-something-year-old producers here are keeping me hip and stuff.
Right.
I may dye my hair every few weeks to make sure the grades don't come in and that type of thing. But I'm also of the generation that I remember life before social media was our everything, and before Al Gore's internet was our everything.
Yes.
And so I remember what it was like to have to go to a convention and shake hands and take a deep breath before you had to network and introduce yourself to somebody. So I remember getting the number to the E network from a phone book.
Right.
And I called over to the E network while I was a student at Norfolk State University, and I left a voicemail message for a producer that was producing the show that Tanya Hart was doing on E at the time. And she called this young college student back and was like, the producer called me and gave me your number. And I just had to call and see who this ambitious young man was that reached out to me and said he was really inspired by my career. And Tanya sat on the phone with a perfect stranger in a dorm room down in Norfolk, Virginia, and talked to me for 90 minutes. And at the end of that call, she said to me, I can't wait to meet you in person. And if forever there's an opportunity where you're applying for a job, just put my company on your resume and say you're one of my East Coast contributors. Wow. And just having somebody take a chance on me like that, sight unseen, really helped. You know what I'm saying? And then there's a personality on Sirius XM's Heart and Soul. Her name is Michelle Wright. I was an intern at a radio station in Washington, D.C., and Michelle saw this ambitious, hungry intern and took me under her wing and had me start to help produce content for her midday show. And when I went back to college that fall, Michelle started paying me out of her pocket and sending me a stipend to help create this content for her midday show. So she was technically my first boss in the business because she's the first person to ever pay me to do work in the entertainment industry. So both of those women are two women that have been very pivotal and very key in my success. And there have been so many other great people. I mean, listen, Rashawn, there were times when I was being tested for a game show. And I called you and you really walked me through the nuances and the hows and the how nots and the what to do's and the what not to do's while I was on that journey. And then you were talking earlier about like owning my space and not feeling competitive with other people. And I have to say, my big brother, Roland Martin, said something to me years ago that always stuck with me. He was like, ain't nobody out Roland Martin.
Yes.
And he was like, I'm going to be me and I'm going to be me unapologetically. And the reason why I never get intimidated by any of my peers is I know when I show up, whether it's Jawn, the personality, the TV talent, the host, or whether it's Jawn, the producer, Jawn, the brains, Jawn, the strategist, Jawn, the visionary, the creative, I know that I bring my best self to all of those situations. And if for some reason people like what you do different than I do, then that's your blessing. It's not mine.
Right.
So I've never been nervous or intimidated by being in anybody else's spaces because you can't out John Murray, And so that was one of the gifts that Roland Martin got me. And it really helped shape my approach to this because we can slip into accidental competitiveness. We can slip into these toxic behaviors of wanting or emulating or desiring what we see other people have. But the other thing that I've learned through trial and error is, Rashawn, I don't know the story behind your glory. And so it looks good on the outside, but I might not want to go through the sleepless nights and the crying moments and the bankruptcies or whatever the other things you had to go through to become the excellence that you are. I may not want to go through all of that. So finding my own path and my own journey is the best path for me because the struggles and the obstacles that I've had to face to get to this point, I wouldn't want to share those with anybody else, and you don't want to share yours with me,
I tell you, you can't out John Murray. You
need
to put that on the wall because that fits you. You can't out Jawn. Jawn. That's beautiful. And I know Roland Martin, so I know he is the truth. And I remember when he left TV One, when the show got canceled, he talked to me. He said, Rashawn, what I'm going to do? I said, won't you just start doing your show on YouTube? He said, huh? I said, won't you just take control of your narrative? Sometimes all you got to do is tell somebody something and they hear it. And guess what? He's been controlling his narrative. And the only person who can cancel Roland is Roland. That's the beauty of him living his life now. Highly successful. Thousands of subscribers, generating revenue for him personally. All he has to do is produce content. But my friend, and I call you my friend because coming up to New York and seeing you and Sherri, you executive producing, you off on the side talking to her on. I love y'all, man. I love you as a young man who is doing something very inspirational in his business. It's your time. It's your time in social media. Continue to speak. Continue to carry that trophy. That trophy of honesty, that trophy of being able to get it done because you can't out Jawn Murray. Thank you for coming on Money Making Conversation.
I have to say this on my way out, though. If you really love me, you'd send me one of those cakes you be baking now. Well, I'm tired of seeing this good food and not tasting in the oven.
Okay, so you know, when I was up there, Jawn, you said, Rashawn, we're going to bring you on the show.
We're going to get you back up here to cook for. If I got to book you to eat your cake, then wait a minute, that didn't translate well. If I got to book you to eat some of your good food, then that's what we're going to make happen.
Absolutely, my brother. I love you, brother. We talk soon. And tell Sherri hi, okay?
I will do.
Thank you for coming on Money Making Conversation Masterclass. That's Jawn, because you can't out Jawn Murray, executive producer of Sherri.